Chapter 301-short-lived. What is the dark purple light pill? Li Yi is also not sure. However, Li Yi can basically make a rough judgment. Tailed Beast Bomb. Even if it weren't for Tailed Beast Bomb, that's pretty much the same. You know, Konoha Village has been researching Tailed Beast Bomb, especially in recent years. The research process has been greatly improved. In the original work, Namikaze Minato also created Rasengan in the past few years, borrowing from Tailed Beast Bomb. Konoha Village, that is Kyubi, 9 tails, which is now sealed in the body of Uzumaki Kushina. Therefore, Li Yi can conclude that the dark purple light pill the size of the head is not the Tailed Beast Bomb of Kyubi, 9 tails. However, even the artificial Tailed Beast Bomb can imagine its power. Li Yi disappeared in an instant without a trace. Several Jonins were stunned when they saw this scene. Why run? However, immediately after, they all saw the dark purple light pill above their heads, and a look of doubt appeared on their faces. What is this? Why does it look so gorgeous? This dark purple light pill does not have any energy fluctuations. It looks like an ordinary glass ball, but it looks a little better. However, if it is really a glass ball, then its falling speed cannot be so slow. Even if it is in free fall, it should have fallen to the ground by now, instead of floating in the air and slowly falling. Although they can't feel the breath of the dark purple light pill, they are all Jonin and have been tempered by countless battles, so they have a keen sixth sense that is beyond ordinary people. And now, their sixth sense tells them that this dark purple light pill is afraid of danger. Therefore, they all retreated to the edge of the 4 purple sun formation, which was already a long way from the dark purple light pill. The dark purple light pill is the size of a head, and now, they can't see the dark purple light pill, and they can imagine the distance between the two sides. Several Jonin breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the dark purple light pills landed slowly, otherwise, they would not have time to spread such a long distance. They are all cautious people. Although they have opened such a long distance, they are still worried, and they have done a few defensive measures before they completely slack off. Finally, the purple light pill fell to the ground. For a second, there is no energy fluctuation. For 2 seconds, there was no difference. However, 3 seconds later, the light erupted. Like a flash in the pan, the entire 4 purple sun array was instantly covered by a bright explosion of light. The light of the explosion was as fast as a flood. Because it couldn't break through the 4 purple sun formation, it could only spread upwards. In the blink of an eye, it spread to a height of 100 meters. At the same time, in the devil fruit space, Li Yi stood on the ground, patted his chest, and breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he escaped in time, otherwise, he would have been shattered by now. Suddenly, the space vibrated violently. Li Yi almost fell to the ground without standing still. His eyes widened. You must know that the devil fruit space is a different space, and it is 2 completely different worlds from the real space. But now, the different space is actually shaking. What is going on outside? Moreover, in a feint, Li Yi heard a thunderous explosion. Sarutobi Hiruzen, that old guy, is trying to get rid of me. Li Yi's face became extremely gloomy at this moment. Chapter 302-Murder with a Knife. To be honest, Li Yi already had killing intent towards Sarutobi Hiruzen at this moment. Well, you immortal thing, dare to trick me. Li Yi was thinking in his mind how to deal with Sarutobi Hiruzen. Provoking Orochimaru, persuading Namikaze Minato, or with Danzo. In a short period of time, Li Yi thought of many ways. However, none of them were realistic. Therefore, in a short period of time, Li Yi really couldn't think of a good way. Moreover, people have to bow their heads under the eaves. Li Yi left Konoha village now, there would be no good place to live. The outside world is dangerous, and Li Yi intends to take Konoha village as a refuge until he has absolute power. Therefore, Li Yi should not know about this matter today. However, this matter can't be left alone. Li Yi clenched his fists, clenched the Kiba Pass, and said in his heart, I must avenge this revenge today. That old man Sarutobi Hiruzen is now a bit more ruthless, and he is farther and farther away from the kind old man in the original book. Ah. However, Lee Yi also knows that Sarutobi Hiruzen's personality has changed drastically. The main reason is his own provocation. Although Sarutobi Hiruzen itself is a very dark person, in the original book of Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, as Hokage, suppresses his nature, hides the darkness in his heart, and only shows the bright side. And now, Lee Yi has drawn out the dark side of Sarutobi Hiruzen. Second generation of Hokage Senju Tobarama once said, "Danzo, you are very similar to the monkey, Sarutobi Hiruzen. Both of you have the potential to do Hokage, but Danzo, the way you deal with problems is too cruel." Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo are very similar. And now, under the provocation of Lee Yi, Sarutobi Hiruzen is about to become the next Shimura Danzo. Although doing so, Lee Yi felt a little guilty. However, Lee Yi had to do it. In order to deal with Lexus, and for Ayame's personal safety, Lee Yi must kill Lexus and Kaharu Udatane. However, after all, Kaharu Udatane is a member of the Great House of Fire Kingdom, and it is difficult to deal with her. Even if Sarutobi Hiruzen wants to deal with Kaharu Udatane, if there is no valid reason, it is probably not easy. If Ayame is defiled by Lexus, then even if he complains to Sarutobi Hiruzen, I am afraid that Sarutobi Hiruzen will not make a difference. Because of this, Lee Yi came up with a strategy at that time, to uproot the entire Fire Nation's famous family. Don't you think that you are a big name and are very powerful and powerful? Then I will uproot the entire daimyo. I want to see how awesome and powerful you will be then. However, with the strength of Lee Yi alone, it is difficult to deal with the daimyo. Therefore, Lee Yi wanted to use a knife to kill. He is very aware of the contradiction between Hokage's side and the daimyo's side, so he deliberately provoked Sarutobi Hiruzen, talked about the pros and cons, talked about the advantages and disadvantages, and used Sarutobi Hiruzen's hand to destroy the entire daimyo. If you don't destroy the daimyo, even if you suppress the transition to Lexus now, you may not be able to suppress it in the future. After all, dogs can't change to eat sheep. However, as long as the entire daimyo room is uprooted, then he will directly kill Lingzi and wipe it out, and no one will dare to say a word. Just as Lee Yi was pondering, suddenly, an extremely weak voice sounded from not far away and entered Lee Yi's ears. "Little brother Lee Yi, I think I can still save it." Chapter 303-Deadly. I think I can still save it. A weak voice suddenly entered Lee Yi's ears. Lee Yi immediately turned to look. I saw a one-armed man lying on the ground. The ground under his body had been stained with blood, and an arm was placed in the pool of blood. He looked extremely embarrassed and terrible. Who is this person? It is Might Dai. Seeing that Might Dai hadn't died, Lee Yi couldn't help but be surprised. Reason that Might Dai endured such an attack, not only broke his arm, but also was directly pierced by a knife, and is now dead. But now, he is not dead now, but is still alive. Sure enough, people like Might Dai and Might Guy have a strong physique and are not easy to die. Lee Yi sighed in his heart. The next moment, his expression suddenly became anxious, and he hurriedly walked in front of Might Dai, squatting and asking with eagerness, "Dai, I will send you back to the village for treatment now, don't you worry, I will not let you die, I will let you live." The tone is sincere, and people can't find a trace of fault. However, Lee Yi is pretending. His previous plan was very simple, sacrificing Might Dai alone to accomplish his goal. After so many things, Lee Yi's character has long been set. He will do anything to achieve his goals, as long as he can achieve his goals, let alone sacrifice a Might Dai. Even if he sacrifices the people who have the best relationship with him, he may not be able to do anything. We'll think about it. Human nature is like that, neither right nor wrong. Before, Might Dai became a chess piece in Lee Yi's hands, and it was a big chess piece. However, since Might Dai isn't dead yet, I'll send him back and sell his favor. Li Yi narrowed his eyes and planned to take Might Dai back. However, before going back, Li Yi wanted to take another look at the situation outside. The purple light pill that fell from the sky just now has extremely terrifying power. If Li Yi guessed correctly, the purple light pill should be the artificial tailed beast bomb researched by Konoha village. Therefore, Li Yi quietly opened a door, only the size of a fist. Moreover, Li Yi's body was kept 5 or 6 meters away from the door, a safe distance. Facts have proved that Li Yi's approach is completely correct. As soon as the fist-sized door opened, a wild wave roared from outside the door, carrying intense heat. Call. Even though Li Yi was far apart, he could feel the temperature of the surrounding heaven and earth begin to rise at a speed visible to the naked eye. If Li Yi directly faced the door, then Li Yi's face is probably already familiar by now. When the air waves stopped rushing outside the door, Li Yi approached and looked at the outside world through the door. The outside is already devastated, and the sky has become extremely dark, as if the world has experienced the end of the world. A huge pit appeared on the ground, shocking the world. This pit is in the shape of a hemisphere, starting from the earth where the purple light pill falls, and the diameter is the length of the side of the 4 Ziyang arrays. There was also a mushroom cloud floating above the sky, obscuring the sky. 4 Ziyang formation are covered with cracks at this time, and they are crumbling, as if they will collapse in the next moment. And in the 4 Ziyang formations, there is no shadow of any creature, whether it is a human being, a bird or a beast, or even a bug, it no longer exists. At this moment, the heaven and earth among the 4 Ziyang formations have become a complete dead place. Chapter 304-Revenge. Hi. Li Yi couldn't help taking a deep breath. It seems that I guessed correctly, the power of that purple light pill is really tyrannical. It's just that the purple light pill seems to be a bit out of the plot of the original book. In the original work of Hokage, although the current country of fire is the first country in the ninja world, the technology is not yet developed, and it is basically impossible to develop such a powerful means. But now, the purple light pill has actually appeared. This world is getting farther and farther from the original world, and I don't know what this world will develop into in the end. Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly, and the light in his eyes flickered, sparkling and wise. However, the time is urgent now. If Might Dai is not given effective treatment, no matter how powerful he is, he will surely die. Then go find Tsunade, she should still be in my room. Therefore, Li Yi directly used the ability of the door fruit and transferred it into the room. However, there was no one in the room, it was empty. Tsunade is not there. Where did that girl go? Li Yi frowned. However, Li Yi didn't think much about it. Tsunade's status in Konoha village was very high. Even Shimura Danzo, a lunatic, wouldn't dare to touch Tsunade's hair. So no need to worry about Tsunade at all. Since Tsunade is not here, then I'll go to the medical department. I made a mark in the medical department before, and I can come directly. Li Yi was transferred to the medical department. Because it is late at night, there are not many people in the medical department, and their skills are not very good. They saw Might Dai's injury, they were all shocked, and then several people rushed to heal Might Dai. Some people delivered chakra to Might Dai's body to keep his heart beating and vitality, some people gave Might Dai stitches in his arms, and some people hurried out to inform the experts in the medical department. In short, this night, the medical department is not destined to be calm. Might Dai's face was no longer pale, but gradually recovered. Yuhi-run, Li Yi knew that he would not die. As for whether that arm can be connected, I can't say. However, being able to save a small life is already quite good. Therefore, Li Yi walked out of the medical department, looked up at the bright moon, and suddenly there was a killing intent in his eyes. Sarutobi Hiruzen, that old guy, I dare not move, but the 4 of you cast the array, hee. Li Yi thought about it. An oval door appeared out of thin air in front of him, and he stepped into the door one step at a time. Back on the battlefield. The 4 purple planes that shrouded the battlefield several hundred meters in radius had disappeared at this time. Between the sky and the earth, there is not even a single weed, only the smoke and dust and gray fog are still floating in the air, which is extremely desolate. It looks like all 4 of them are gone. Li Yi narrowed his eyes, feeling a little disappointed. Of course, at this moment, a sound of flying and falling suddenly sounded from not far away. Li Yi turned his head to look, and saw a man in a black robe with a ghost mask on his face coming from a distance. When he saw Li Yi, he stopped and asked in surprise, "Huh? Why are you still alive?" Li Yi didn't answer, just grinned at him, and the white Kiba teeth reflected a compelling cold light under the bright moonlight. And the next moment, Li Yi didn't say a word and shot directly. Chapter 305-Fighting. Although the other party is a Jonin, he is extremely responsive. But he never imagined that Li Yi would suddenly attack him. Therefore, when Li Yi's fist landed on the surface of his chest, he still hadn't reacted. With a muffled sound of boom, the man flew out directly, his chest also sunken in an instant, a mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth, and his face suddenly turned pale. However, before he could stabilize his body, he saw Li Yi approaching quickly like lightning, causing his pupils to contract violently at this moment. Without the slightest hesitation, he resisted the pain in his chest and quickly hand-sealed with both hands. When Li Yi punched his head, he turned into a tree stump with a bang. Li Yi's fist pierced not his head, but a tree stump. Li Yi threw the stump to the ground, stood on the ground and looked around. The man appeared 20 or 30 meters in front of the left. His face was extremely gloomy. He stared at Li Yi with flames in his eyes, and said, "Li Yi, what do you want to do? Do you want to betray?" Li Yi didn't answer, but raised his right foot and slowly walked towards the man step by step. "Since you're so stubborn, then I'll be rude to you." The man took out his saber, shook it slowly, and drank softly, "Hantha, Lu." The long sword swayed regularly, like a willow branch, which was dazzling. Li Yi just glanced at the swaying long sword, and his eyes became dull. He was moving forward, but stopped at this moment. When the man saw this scene, a grin of disdain appeared on his face, and he rushed towards Li Yi immediately, the long sword in his hand aimed at Li Yi's throat. But just at the last minute, Li Yi suddenly raised his right hand and clamped the sword between his index finger and thumb. In an instant, the long sword could not move, and could no longer move forward. How is this possible? The man's pupils shrank suddenly, and a thick inconceivable color appeared on his face. Li Yi has already been hit with demonic illusion, how come it was lifted so quickly? What did he do? However, before the man recovered from the shock, Li Yi opened his eyes and grinned at the man. The man sensed the danger and wanted to retreat to avoid it, but his hands were still clutching the hilt of the sword. His hands and feet were different, so he froze in place. Roar! The loud dragon's roar exploded out of Li Yi's body like a bomb and shot straight into the sky. The sound was deafening, making the man's eyes black and lost for a moment. At this moment, the golden dragon that spewed out of Li Yi's body had already landed on the man's chest. Man spit out a blood mist with a wow, and his body flew out directly. However, just after he flew 2 or 3 meters, another golden dragon flew from behind his body and landed on his back. In an instant, his lobster-like body became straight like a pine tree. PFF'd, puff. The man sprayed several mouthfuls of blood, and the sternum, ribs, and backbones were all comminuted and fractured. There was too much air in and out, and his breathing became sluggish. But it's not over yet. Another huge golden dragon descended from the sky, turned into a vertically falling meteorite, and mercilessly landed on the heavenly cover above the man's head. Crack! The sound of brain shattering. 3 huge golden dragons bombarded the man continuously, causing his body to stop directly in the air, unable to fall down at all. Chapter 306-Pretend Grandson. In the end, the man lay in a pool of blood, without the breath of life. Li Yi beat him to death. Huh, I finally let out a bad breath. Li Yi slowly exhaled a suffocating breath. After looking around again and making sure there was no one else around, Li Yi entered the space of the door fruit. In space. Li Yi narrowed his eyes and thought. Sarutobi Hiruzen, that old guy is plotting against me, and I have to avenge this revenge, but I only have one chance to evolve now. Alas, if Uchiha didn't set a sand seal on me, then I now have 3 chances to evolve. Thinking of this, Li Yi sighed lightly. Before, Li Yi had 3 evolution opportunities. However, in order to crack the sand seal of the palace, Li Yi directly consumed 2 evolution opportunities. Now there is 1 left, and Li Yi intends to use it. But not now. Just use it when you get home. Li Yi opened a door and returned home. To be precise, it was back in Tsunade's room. However, the room was still empty and Tsunade had not returned. Where did this girl go? Looking at the messy bed, Li Yi frowned slightly. But Li Yi didn't think much about it. He pushed open the door, ready to take a nap to refresh his mind. However, when he was at the door just now, his pupils shrank slightly. Because he saw someone on the sofa. A middle-aged man in his early 40s, still holding a pipe in his hand, surrounded by clouds of smoke. Sarutobi Hiruzen. Li Yi stopped, his heart sank slightly. Sarutobi Hiruzen come in person. And still at this time. Did he want to kill someone? Thinking of this, the nerves of Li Yi's whole body tightened, and his eyes became extremely cautious, staring at Sarutobi Hiruzen. At this moment, Sarutobi Hiruzen spoke up. What are you still doing? Why don't you sit down quickly? Li Yi was cautious, he was not afraid. Besides, this is your own home, so what kind of formality are you afraid of in your own home? Therefore, Li Yi swaggered forward and sat on the sofa opposite Sarutobi Hiruzen. Lord Hokage, in fact, you don't have to come to me in person. I was just about to find you. I have successfully completed the task. Li Yi said with a gentle smile. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a puff of cigarette and did not speak. Afterwards, he took several puffs of cigarettes in a row, but still did not speak. Until the 8th puff, Sarutobi Hiruzen let out a roar of smoke and finally opened his mouth, looking at Li Yi and asking, Li Yi, are you resenting me? What is Lord Hokage talking about? Li Yi pretended to be puzzled. Do you think I want to get rid of you together? Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't cut corners and got straight to the point. I definitely didn't think so. Lord Hokage knew that I knew space ninjutsu, and the purple light pill was falling so slowly at that time. I had plenty of time to escape and dodge. If Lord Hokage wanted to kill me, then the purple light pill, the falling speed of the light pill won't be so slow. Li Yi shook his head and said. Hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen breathed a sigh of relief, nodded and said, just understand. Li Yi hurriedly brewed a pot of hot tea for Sarutobi Hiruzen, and said at the same time, I just sent I to the medical department. I don't want to come back to pack up and then go to see you. I didn't expect you to come, the humble house is full of glory. Actually, I'm here, not just for this one thing. Sarutobi Hiruzen said suddenly. Chapter 307 Tsunade was caught. Not just for one thing. Sarutobi Hiruzen said suddenly. Is there anything else? Li Yi asked. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded and said, you have a very good relationship with Tsunade, so I'll tell you directly about this matter. Huh? Li Yi frowned, instinctively feeling that something was wrong. Sarutobi Hiruzen said, Tsunade was taken away. Hearing this, Li Yi's eyes widened in anger instantly, and his whole body burst out with murderous intent. However, he is very clear that the more he is at this time, the less excited he is, which will only make things more and more chaotic. Therefore, Li Yi forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart, clenched his hands, and asked in a low voice, who is it? Not from Konoha village. Sarutobi Hiruzen said, after you and Might Dai went out on a mission, she was worried about you and went out with you, but she didn't know where you were on a mission, so she went in the opposite direction with you, and now she was taken away by people from the enemy country, the whereabouts are still unknown. Quote. Hearing the words, Li Yi bit Kiba and gnashed his teeth. I have already sent someone out to search and rescue her, so don't worry too much, but if you still have the energy now, let's go out and look for her together. Sarutobi Hiruzen patted Li Yi's shoulder and said, Tsunade is very important to you as well as to me. If it wasn't for official business, I would definitely go out and find it myself. Saying that, Sarutobi Hiruzen stood up, took a heavy puff of cigarette, and prepared to leave. But at this moment, Li Yi suddenly asked, Lord Hokage, how did you know that Tsunade was taken away? Around Konoha village, there are countless eyeliners from Konoha village. Tsunade was captured by 4 masters. That eyeliner was afraid of being killed, so he hid in the dark and didn't show up. After Tsunade was captured, he sneaked away. Come back and tell me about it. Sarutobi Hiruzen explained. Lord Hokage, can you take me to that ninja? Li Yi asked. Hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't reply immediately, but turned around and stared at Li Yi. His eyes were extremely sharp, he slowly smoked a cigarette, and his behavior was slow, which gave a huge pressure invisibly. However, after a while, Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded and said, Okay, come with me. After saying that, Sarutobi Hiruzen turned around and walked out of the room. Li Yi did not immediately follow Sarutobi Hiruzen, but went into the bedroom and called Violet up. Violet was sleeping in Luo, and because the weather was very hot, she did not cover the quilt, so Bai Wawa's skin was exposed. However, Li Yi didn't have the heart to think about it now. After waking her up, he said, Get dressed immediately and follow me. After that, Li Yi turned around and walked out of the bedroom, quickly following Sarutobi Hiruzen. After a while, Violet also followed, and she still looked sleepy, with a few crystal dander at the corners of her eyes. Li Yi gently wiped off the dandruff from Violet's eyes, making her cheeks look like Yuhi, and her heart was beating faster. Under the moonlight, Sarutobi Hiruzen walked unhurriedly ahead. Li Yi was a little anxious. Tsunade has been taken away, why are you so leisurely? You said you were worried about Tsunade, why didn't I see it at all? 7 or 8 minutes before Sarutobi Hiruzen arrived at his destination. This is a house, with 2 floors, like a villa. Sarutobi Hiruzen knocked on the door, opened his mouth, and said in a strong voice, Orange, it's me. Chapter 308-Orange. The door was opened. A burst of scent hits the face. A woman with orange hair came into Li Yi's field of vision. She seemed to have just taken a shower, her hair was still wet, many of which were on her skin, and she was wrapped in a bath towel, which didn't look firm and would slip off the next moment. Her pupils were also orange and looked beautiful, but there was no brilliance in her beautiful eyes, as if she had lost hope in life. She saw Sarutobi Hiruzen. She said lightly, You're here, come first. I just finished taking a bath, just in time to be with you. Sarutobi Hiruzen seems to be a regular here. However, before she could finish her sentence, Sarutobi Hiruzen interrupted with a wave of her hand. I'm here to find you, just for Tsunade, and I'll introduce you to another person by the way. Saying that, Sarutobi Hiruzen waved to Li Yi who was not far away and said, Li Yi, come here. Li Yi walked to Sarutobi Hiruzen. Sarutobi Hiruzen introduced. Orange, this is Li Yi, you should know him. Orange still looked up and down even Li Yi, there was a hint of memory in her beautiful eyes, and a faint light flickered. Originally, her eyes were godless, but they also looked very beautiful, but now, as she is recalling, there is a glimmer of light in her eyes, which makes her look even more moving. However, after more than 10 seconds, the woman's eyes lost its luster again, nodded and said, Of course I remember him, his mother was my former master, and I hugged him when he was a child, but it's just that, my master and my father seem to be dead now, don't they? Orange asked without any scruples and no restraint. Sarutobi Hiruzen did not hide anything, nodded and said, 5 or 6 years ago, their parents died on the battlefield, and now he lives alone, and he has a good relationship with Tsunade, so, put all the information you know, tell him everything exactly. The tone is imperative. Good. Orange agreed without hesitation. After she finished speaking, she turned to the side, pushed the door with one hand, and covered the bath towel with the other, and said, "Please come inside." Li Yi was also polite, nodded and walked into the room. Violet also wanted to go in with Li Yi, but was pulled by Sarutobi Hiruzen. "Girl, I know that you have a good relationship with Li Yi, and life and death are inseparable, but I know that the fewer people the better, so you should not go in." "I won't go in either, the two of us will wait outside in peace." "Bar." Sarutobi Hiruzen explained. Violet did not listen to Sarutobi Hiruzen's words at all, and wanted to break away from Sarutobi Hiruzen's right hand to follow Li Yi. In her eyes, she has only one master, and that is Li Yi. Don't say that Sarutobi Hiruzen is Hokage, even if he is the overlord of the entire ninja world, Violet will not listen to him. She only listens to Li Yi's words and unconditionally obeys any of Li Yi's orders. Even if Li Yi lets her die, she will do it without hesitation. This is the power of loyalty of the kin. However, just when Violet was about to break free from Sarutobi Hiruzen's palm, Li Yi's voice suddenly came from the room. "Violet, just wait outside, don't worry about me." Hearing the words, Violet stopped immediately and stopped taking half a step forward. "Then you two just wait here for a while, I will finish the meeting with Brother Li Yi soon." After Yanran smiled and said, Orange closed the door. Li Yi were left in the room. However, as soon as Orange closed the door, the towel on her body slipped down. Chapter 309-pay. So, all the beautiful scenery was reflected in Li Yi's eyes. Li Yi did not cover his eyes or face Yuhi, but stared straight at the extremely beautiful scenery in front of him. In fact, it is a lie to say that Li Yi's heart has no waves. How can there be no fluctuations? However, Li Yi only fluctuated a little. After all, as a former standard rich second generation, Li is determined to see these beautiful scenery a lot. To put it more simply, he is already immune. Seeing that Li Yi's face was not, Yuhi was not breathing, and his orange face was expressionless, and he did not pick up the bath towel on the ground, but quietly looked at Li Yi and asked, "Does it look good?" "Not bad." Li Yi honestly commented. "You seem to be a very experienced man." Orange said lightly. "What's the basis for this?" Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly and asked. Orange replied, "It's just my feeling." After speaking, she picked up the bath towel on the ground and wrapped it around her graceful body again. "Want to see more beautiful scenery?" Orange walked into the room, brushed shoulders with Li Yi, and asked at the same time. A gust of fragrant wind came to his face, and the fragrance entered his nose, but Li Yi was not confused at all, and still replied coldly, "If it is another time, then I may investigate the root cause, but I don't have time right now." Hearing this, Orange did not answer immediately, but built a pot of tea before saying, "Is Tsunade-sama so important to you?" Li Yi replied, "It's more important than you think. Come on, drink tea, I'll tell you the truth after drinking tea." Orange poured a cup of hot tea for Li Yi and said, "Anyway, Tsunade has already been captured, so you are not in a hurry." Li Yi sat on the sofa opposite Orange, looking at the pale green tea in front of him, squinting his eyes thoughtfully. "You know, I was originally Hokage-sama's disciple." Orange's tone suddenly a little sad, said. "Huh." Li Yi frowned slightly. "Master Tsunade took my place." Orange said again. "That's how the world is, the big is the small, the strong beat the weak, there's nothing strange, it's normal." Li Yi said lightly. "Yeah, how great Master Tsunade is. Grandpa is Shodai first Sama, and second grandpa is Nadaime second Sama. In the land of fire, who can compare with her?" Orange laughed at himself, "But, I'm not convinced. I'm obviously similar to her in every aspect, and even better than her. Why can she become Lord Hokage, direct disciple, but I can't. Why? Halfway through his words, Li Yi had already fixed his sharp eyes on her, but she didn't seem to notice it. You know, in order to become Lord Hokage's disciple, in order to obtain the rights that should belong to me, I have paid a lot, and I have done everything you can imagine as a woman. Orange's voice has become a little choked. Li Yi suddenly realized. No wonder she said that when she saw Sarutobi Hiruzen before. Turns out she's from Sarutobi Hiruzen. Ahem. However, in the original, Hokage, there is no orange woman at all. It seems that this world, along with Li Yi's constant disturbance, is undergoing earth-shaking changes, and even, new characters, have been fabricated out of thin air. After that, what Cheng said made Li Yi's face suddenly become cold and murderous. I paid so much, but only got a few empty words. Lord Hokage didn't act at all. I hate him, and I hate Lord Tsunade even more. Chapter 310_underestimate who. I hate him, and even more Tsunade-sama. Although Orange's tone was extremely aggrieved, it was more of anger. However, after hearing this, Li Yi's face suddenly turned cold. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Yi suddenly stretched out his right hand, like a dragon's claw hand, and clasped Orange's white and tender neck with lightning speed. Ah! In an instant, Orange couldn't breathe, and let out a dull pained cry. Boom! Li Yi smashed the orange on the wall and made a loud noise, showing no pity for Shangxiu. Then, Li Yi grabbed Orange's neck and lifted her up along the wall. What do you mean? Li Yi lowered his voice and asked. Due to the suffocation, Orange's face had already turned purple, but not only did she not show the slightest bit of pain, but she forced a smile and said with difficulty, I mean very clearly, I hope she will die, she will die. Well, my wish is fulfilled. As soon as these words came out, Li Yi's right hand grip suddenly increased. In an instant, Orange felt as if his neck was about to be broken. Because Li Yi's actions were very rude, the bath towel on Orange's body fell off again, and she is now naked, with no clothes on. Do you just care about her so much? What am I inferior to her? I can make you want to die, and I can give you the most comfortable enjoyment. If you don't believe it, you can try it. Orange said with difficulty. Until now, she wanted to compare Tsunade. In her eyes, Tsunade stole the life that should belong to her, the life that should belong to her, and everything that should belong to her. Therefore, she wants to prove that she is stronger than Tsunade and prove her worth. Unfortunately, in this world, Li Yi only wants to marry one woman, and that is Tsunade. Although Li Yi's feelings for Uchiha Makoto are also complicated, they are not as strong as those for Tsunade. Li Yi grabbed Cheng by the neck and threw her to the ground, without the slightest pity. Bang! Orange smashed the wooden chair and fell to the ground. Many parts of his body were scratched by wood fragments, and blood flowed out. Li Yi sat on the sofa with an indifferent face and said, Tell me everything immediately, time waits for no one. You're so inconsiderate. Orange half lay on the ground, with a hint of mockery in his tone. Not only a mockery of Li Yi, but also a self-mockery of himself. Speak quickly. Li Yi's tone was cold. Orange stood up from the ground, regardless of the wound on her body, she stretched her waist, and her figure was charming and moving. She did not wrap a bath towel, and sat directly on the sofa opposite Li Yi, with Erlang's legs raised, and said, Here's the thing. Orange didn't hide anything, and told all the ins and outs of the matter. Li Yi heard the words, he narrowed his eyes slightly, nodded thoughtfully and said, That is to say, you suspect that it was the country of water, right? I'm just skeptical, there's no evidence. Orange is light and authentic. Okay, thanks. After speaking, Li Yi got up, turned around and walked quickly towards the outside of the room. But before Li Yi left the room, Cheng suddenly said, Don't you stay here for a while. I believe in my skills, just give me 7 or 8 minutes, and I'll make you satisfied. Hearing this, Li Yi just laughed, and without turning his head or walking, he asked sarcastically, "Who are you underestimating? How could my time be so short?" Chapter 311-Search and Rescue. Li Yi walked out of Orange's room. To be honest, if the situation was not urgent, then Li Yi would definitely taste the taste of Orange. Orange needs to have a good appearance, a figure and a body, and a temperament. Everything is so perfect. Li Yi is not a saint. If there is a chance, how could he miss her? Not to mention being responsible, how wonderful. However, Li Yi's mind is full of Tsunade, so he has no time to pay attention to the beauty of Orange. Looking at the back of Li's resolute departure, a look of loneliness appeared on Orange's beautiful face, and he thought, am I really inferior to that woman? Am I that bad? Why am I like this, and this man still refuses to touch me? She seduces Li Yi, just to prove that she is no worse than Tsunade. It's a pity that the result she got was so disappointing to her. However, what she didn't know was that she had chosen the wrong person. If it is someone else, even if it is replaced by the third generation of Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, I am afraid it will not be as decisive as Li Yi. This man seems quite interesting. In Orange's heart, an urge to get to know Li Yi suddenly rose. Suddenly, she took a deep breath. She was covered in wounds, blood dripping, and pain all over her body. HMPH, that guy doesn't take pity on Shangxiu at all. It's really hateful. If there is a chance, I must take revenge on him. Orange was secretly ruthless in his heart. Li Yi walked out of the room. Sarutobi Hiruzen and Uzumaki Violet are waiting outside. The two are talking. Seeing Li Yi come out, Sarutobi Hiruzen stopped talking to Violet, put his eyes on Li Yi, and said, "How is it? Are there any eyebrows?" "Have some." Li Yi nodded and said, "Lord Hokage, please allow me to go out to search and rescue Tsunade." "Need a teammate?" Sarutobi Hiruzen asked. Li Yi subconsciously wanted to say, "Might Dai." However, Might Dai has been seriously injured and is still in a coma in the medical department. In this world, the one who can give Li Yi the most sense of security, if Might Dai is the second, then no one dares to be the first. No exaggeration at all. Today, Mizukage in the Land of Water has been controlled by Uchiha Madara, but now Uchiha Madara is old and frail. Although Rinnegan is turned on, it does not show much strength. In the original book of Hokage, Might Dai's son Might Dai almost kicked Uchiha Madara to death in his prime. Madara in his prime, not only has Rinnegan, but also Ten Tails People Jinchuriki, Column Power, and most importantly, Young. But even so, he was almost kicked to death by Might Dai. One can imagine the power of the 8 inner gates. It's a pity that Might Dai can't be counted on now. Therefore, Li Yi changed his words, "Namikaze Minato." Sarutobi Hiruzen replied, "Minato has gone out with Kushina to find Tsunade." "Is that so?" Li Yi nodded and said, "Then I don't need teammates, maybe we can meet on the way, just me and Violet." "What do you think, Violet?" Sarutobi Hiruzen suddenly looked at Violet and asked. Li Yi's eyes flashed slightly. "I'm going out with Li Yi." Violet replied without hesitation. "Good." Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded, then took out a pen and 2 pieces of paper, drew a symbol on each, handed it to Li Yi and Violet, and said, "With this as a proof, you can enter and leave the village at will." Chapter 312-Think. Li Yi and Violet leave the village together. Violet followed behind Li Yi, looked at Li Yi's back, and asked, "Master, are you really going to the Land of Water?" "Of course." Li Yi nodded. Hearing this, Violet was silent for a while, and then asked, "Master, do you want to break with Konoha village?" "Not now." Li Yi shook his head. "I see." Violet seemed relieved. She had already recognized Li Yi as the master, and regarded Li Yi's safety as more important than her own life. Therefore, she very much does not want Li Yi to take risks. It would be quite a risky thing if Li Yi broke with Konoha village. Violet is not stupid, she is very smart, she can see that Konoha village is Li Yi's safest shelter right now, no one. After leaving Konoha village, Li Yi's next situation, although not impossible, is also full of crises. Therefore, Violet wanted to let Li Yi endure it first. Endure the calm for a while. After you have absolute strength or means in the future, it will not be too late to go out. In fact, this point, without Violet, Li Yi also knows. And Li Yi also planned to do so. Most importantly, Tsunade, Makoto, Ayame and others are all from Konoha village. If Li Yi breaks with Konoha village now, where will they be placed? Therefore, the issue of independence will have to be discussed later. Master, shall we walk to the land of water, shall we? Violet asked again. Certainly not on foot. Li Yi shook his head. However, he did not explain much. Violet didn't ask any more questions, just nodded lightly. Everything is at the command of the master. Li Yi squinted his eyes and thought for a moment. Konoha village is not close to Kurigakure village, and there is still a section of waterway. From Konoha village to Kurigakure village, it takes at least half a day to travel both day and night. And Tsunade had just been captured for not half a day, that is to say, Tsunade had not yet reached the land of water. If Li Yi can get to the water country one step ahead of them, then he will be able to strike first. However, Li Yi has never been to the land of water. Li Yi killed Tsukazan Fuguki. He did not kill it in the land of water, but in the land of soup. Although the land of soup is not far from the land of water, there is still a long waterway. Therefore, it is not a good idea to go to the land of soup. Let's go find Namikaze Minato. Li Yi narrowed his eyes and made a decision in his heart. He hadn't been to the land of water, but Namikaze Minato certainly had. As long as Namikaze Minato leaves a mark in the land of water, he can instantly move to the land of water. Therefore, Li Yi closed his eyes and began to sense where Namikaze Minato was. I sensed it. Just 2 or 3 seconds, Li Yi opened his eyes, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Come on, let's find Namikaze Minato. Li Yi raised his right hand and waved it gently, and an oval door suddenly appeared in front of him. The two walked into the oval door together. In the forest, a group of people are fighting. The group was divided into 2 groups. One group had 2 people and the other group had 7 or 8 people. The forehead guards worn by the 2 symbolize that they are both from Konoha village, a man and a woman. The man has yellow hair and a handsome face, and the woman has long yuhi-colored hair, beautiful and moving. The 2 are Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. And the 7 or 8 people who fought with them were all wrapped in black cloth and covered their faces, so that people could not see their true faces, nor could they guess their true identities. Originally, the battle was stalemate. Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina didn't like to kill people, but they were entangled, unable to escape, and very passive. Later, after Li Yi appeared, he immediately killed all of this group of people without blinking an eye, and the killing was decisive. Chapter 313-brutal. The battle was at a stalemate. In fact, Namikaze Minato is a cruel person, but in front of Uzumaki Kushina, he does not want to be too cruel. Uzumaki Kushina has a bad temper. In the final analysis, she is a woman with a knife mouth and a tofu heart, and she can't bear to kill. Therefore, the 2 can only find an opportunity to escape in this stalemate battle. Shish! Dozens of kunai fell from the sky, tore through the air, and shot at Uzumaki Kushina. Uzumaki Kushina couldn't dodge, but Namikaze Minato was able to free up his hands, so he immediately shot to help Uzumaki Kushina. But at this moment, Namikaze Minato's chest suddenly opened out of thin air, and an oval-shaped door appeared. Immediately afterwards, a figure in black flew out from the door. However, as soon as he appeared, he saw dozens of kunai approaching him. The surface of kunai is also quenched with poison. Seeing someone suddenly emerge from his body, Namikaze Minato was obviously stunned for a moment, but the next moment, he said incredulously, "Brother Li Yi, why are you here?" However, the answer to Namikaze Minato was a deafening dragon roar. Roar. A golden light flashes between heaven and earth. I saw Lee clenched his fist and slammed into the air, and suddenly a huge golden dragon flew out from his fist, roaring and rushing forward. In an instant, all the kunai were blown away, but the golden dragon was unstoppable, knocking Chunin, who shot the kunai, stunned. Seeing this scene, Uzumaki Kushina's eyes lit up, and he said, "So handsome." But when she saw that it was Lee who made the shot, she immediately frowned and said to herself, "It turns out to be him, HMPH, how can I think he is handsome? I hate him before it's too late." Lee stood on the ground and glanced at the ninjas around him. The enemy's strength is not strong. Namikaze Minato wants to deal with them, it is easy. What's more, there is Uzumaki Kushina to help out. However, the fact is that the battle has not been decided for a long time. Lee immediately figured out the reason, smiled and said, "Since none of you want to be that bad guy, let me do it." Although there are many enemies around, there is only one Jonin, and the others are Chunin. Therefore, Lee dealt with them without breaking a sweat. Even to deal with that Jonin, Lee did not use Dinghai Shenzhen or other powerful means, but used the big sword shark muscle. The big sword shark muscle can absorb the enemy's chakra and use it for himself. While that Jonin wasn't paying attention, the big sword shark muscle sucked on him, absorbing his chakra. He only felt that the world was spinning, his eyes darkened, and then he sat down on the ground, losing most of his combat power. Therefore, it was easier for Lee to deal with him than to deal with those Chunin. "Brother Lee, stay here." However, before Namikaze Minato finished speaking, Lee smashed Jonin's head with a big sword. Of the 7 or 8 people, only one survived, and that was the Jonin who was knocked unconscious with the 9 Dragons Tyrant when Lee Yigang appeared. The rest, all dead. "You're too cruel, aren't you?" As for Uzumaki Kushina first glanced at the multiple headless corpses lying on the ground, then looked at Lee and asked with a frown. "This is war. Either you die or I die. Don't be too naive." Lee didn't even look at Uzumaki Kushina, and said coldly. Uzumaki Kushina was furious. "You." Namikaze Minato hurriedly grabbed her. After that, the 3 began to interrogate. The results of the interrogation surprised them. Chapter 314-Torment. The 3 threw the Chunin awake. "Which country are you from?" Namikaze Minato asked. He, do you think I'll tell you? Even if I die, I won't betray my country and my compatriots." Before he finished speaking, the man's face turned ruthless, and he was about to bite his tongue and commit suicide. But at this moment, Lee slapped him on the head. "Show no mercy." Bang! A muffled sound. The man just smashed to the ground, smashing the hard ground into a deep pit. The dust rose up suddenly. Because of the force of the impact, the bones of the man's arm were cracked. "Ah!" He let out a miserable scream. Lee found a ball of grass, put it in the man's mouth, and then sealed his chakra, making him unable to move, as if he had been immobilized. Then, Lee pulled the man off the ground and began to twist his arm. 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. The more you twist, the bigger the angle. At first, the man did not feel pain. However, as the angle got bigger and bigger, the man felt the pain. "Don't say it," Lee said coldly. "Ah." At this time, the man was already screaming. As we all know, ordinary people's arms twist up to 180 degrees is the limit. However, the angle that Lee is now twisting has far exceeded 180 degrees. The man only felt that his arm was about to be taken off. That's the price of not speaking. Lee didn't stop at all, still slowly twisting the man's arm. If Lee suddenly twisted the man's arm, the pain would only be momentary, and then the man might be able to endure it. But, now, the pain of men continues. Even if his willpower is too strong, this intense and continuous pain will completely destroy his willpower. Sure enough, It didn't take long before the man couldn't hold it any longer, and a buzzing sound came out of his mouth. I said everything. However, because his mouth was covered with grass, it was difficult to hear what he said. Namikaze Minato immediately heard what he meant and hurriedly said, "Brother Lee, don't torture him, he's going to confess." Uzumaki Kushina also said, "Everyone is raised by his father and mother, it is not easy, Lee, stop it." However, after Lee heard the words, he grinned directly and said, "He just said it now, it's too late." The movement in the hand is still non-stop. Ah! The man's screams are getting louder and louder. Uzumaki Kushina's eyebrows are already wrinkled. She doesn't like such a cruel man. Suddenly, a muffled bang sounded from the man's bones. Ahu! Man trembled violently, his mouth became O-shaped, and he let out a scream of pain. He was dislocated. As we all know, the structure of the human body is very delicate, and the bones can fit perfectly with the bones. However, once dislocated, the bone is separated from bone to bone, resulting in the separation and fracture of the limb. Just like now, Lee can pull down a man's entire arm with just one tug. No exaggeration at all. The man is already bleeding and tearing. However, after that, Lee hooked him up again. During the process of splicing the bones, his painful tears flowed again. "Go ahead." Lee looked down at the man with tears in his nose and said lightly, I am a ninja of the land of winds." The man gasped and said. This made Lee, Namikaze Minato, and Uzumaki Kushina stunned. Chapter 315_Alliance. The Land of Wind. The three were stunned for a moment. None of them thought that the other party was actually from the Land of Wind. You know, since ancient times, the relationship between the country of wind and the country of fire has been very good. Leagues are often held between the two countries. In the original book of Hokage, the first Chunin game that Uzumaki Naruto participated in was a league between the two countries. Since the relationship between the Land of Wind and the Land of Fire is so good, why should the ninjas of the Land of Wind attack the people of the Land of Fire again? Why are you attacking us? Standing in front of the man, Namikaze Minato asked with a frown. I won't tell. I won't betray my country. Ah. However, before the man's resolute words were finished, he was interrupted by screams. I saw that Lee began to twist his arm again. His arm has just been connected, and it hasn't recovered yet. It already hurts a lot. Now that it's twisted like this, it's even more unbearable. He screamed up to the sky, blood and tears flowed from his eyes again. I said. Lee just twisted his arm to 180 degrees, he couldn't take it anymore, he kept begging for mercy, it was very pitiful. However, Lee's movements did not stop at all. Eventually, he unscrewed his arm again. I thought this was the end. Unexpectedly, Lee actually grabbed the man's other arm and started to twist it a little bit. Ah, I said everything. The man cried out in pain, and the shrill screams echoed throughout the night sky. Uzumaki Kushina frowned slightly. Lee is too cruel, right? However, she didn't say much. Because she knew very well that even if she said it, Lee would not stop. Lee is such a ruthless man. And, Lee also unscrewed the man's other arm. At this moment, between the man's two arms and shoulders, only the skin and flesh are wrapped, but the bones are completely separated, and it can be pulled off with a gentle tug. Lee didn't reconnect him, but said indifferently, let's talk. The man was already lying on the ground at the moment, sweating profusely in pain, more air in and out less, and his voice was like a gossamer, saying, the country of wind and the country of water have established an alliance, and we must deal with the country of water together. You country of fire. Hearing this, Namikaze Minato nodded, as I expected. Lee asked, have Sand Shadow and Mizukage met? I don't know that. Man replied, we have only one task, and that is to assist the country of water, stab your country of fire in the back, and the only one who is the enemy of your country of fire is the country of water. Uzumaki Kushina asked, "What conditions does the water country give you, so that you can give up our alliance and become friends with the water country?" "I don't know." Man replied, "We're just on orders, and I don't know anything about the twists and turns inside." "Is that so?" Uzumaki Kushina touched his chin thoughtfully. The questions asked by the three are different, which also reflects the different personalities of the three. "Do you have any other questions to ask?" Lee Yi asked at this time. Namikaze Minato shook his head. Uzumaki Kushina noticed a clue, frowned and looked at Lee Yi and said, "Although I don't have any problems, don't be too cruel." However, before Uzumaki Kushina finished speaking, Lee Yi cut off the man's neck and his head fell to the ground. Chapter 316_deflated. Uzumaki Kushina's voice stopped abruptly. She stared round and glared at Lee Yi. Lee Yi lightly wiped the blood from his face, with a look of disapproval. "Lee Yi, you are too cruel." Uzumaki Kushina accused. "No matter how he is said, he is still a living human life. He was raised by his father and mother. Why did you kill him like this? Wouldn't it be bad to spare him a life?" "Blessed bitch." Lee Yi tilted his head slightly, looked at Uzumaki Kushina and asked. "I'm not a bitch, I just wanted to say, you are cruel." Uzumaki Kushina said angrily. "This kind of person, kill and kill, there is nothing cruel or cruel." Lee Yi shrugged nonchalantly and said, "If you don't kill him, he will kill you. If you kill him now, you will avoid future troubles for the future." You. Uzumaki Kushina was speechless by what Lee Yi said. "Okay, don't talk about that." Lee Yi said domineeringly, "Are you going to save Tsunade? What are we doing? Are we obliged to tell you?" Uzumaki Kushina asked rhetorically. However, as soon as she finished speaking, Namikaze Minato nodded. "That old guy really didn't lie to me." Lee Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. Uzumaki Kushina glared at Namikaze Minato and seemed to be complaining about why he was answering Lee Yi. Namikaze Minato gave a wry smile. "Then do you know where Tsunade is now?" Lee Yi asked. "Have I left a mark on Tsunade-sama?" Namikaze Minato shook his head. Lee resolutely said, "I didn't leave a mark on Tsunade's body either." Namikaze Minato changed his words. "However, based on my investigation, I suspect that Tsunade-sama was captured by the Land of Water." "Does that even need to be said?" Lee Yi smiled. "He just killed a couple of Sunagaker, and it has been confirmed that the Land of Water is going to war against the Land of Fire. You two are on a team, we are two on a team, we don't team up with you." At this time, Uzumaki Kushina looked at Lee Yi and Violet and said coldly. Namikaze Minato was a little embarrassed, but helpless. Uzumaki Kushina's strength is not as good as him. Namikaze Minato did not dare to refute what she said. Therefore, Namikaze Minato can only cast an apologetic look at Lee Yi. However, Lee Yi said, "I can appear directly by Tsunade's side." Huh. Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina were both stunned. Namikaze Minato has a high IQ after all, so he reacted the next moment and said, "You left a mark on Tsunade-sama." Lee Yi nodded. "Then we'll go now." Namikaze Minato was eager to try. Lee Yi twitched the corner of his mouth and sneered at Uzumaki Kushina. "Didn't your wife say not to join us?" "I don't dare to join you." The sarcasm is self-evident. Uzumaki Kushina hates Kiba so much. She wanted to say, "HMPH, if there is no one team, then there is no one team, without you, can't we find Lord Tsunade?" However, before she could speak, Lee Yi continued, "Tsunade is too far away from our position now. If we run forward, it will take at least a day to catch up. Even me, I need to make 2 space jumps to be able to catch up." Reluctantly to her side. "HMPH, what are you kidding me? How did Tsunade-sama run so far?" Uzumaki Kushina obviously didn't believe it. Lee Yi grinned and said, "We know space ninjutsu, and so did they. Chapter 317_special. The entire ninja world, it is impossible that only Namikaze Minato can know space ninjutsu. Genius abounds. Naturally, ninjas from other countries also understand space ninjutsu. Otherwise, the current situation cannot be explained. Tsunade had only disappeared for a few hours, and now he has appeared in such a distant place. Only the explanation of space ninjutsu makes sense. Uzumaki Kushina glared slightly, still somewhat incredulous. In her eyes, Namikaze Minato is the most special, if not the most powerful. Hiraishin technique, created by the second-generation Hokage master, he can master it as soon as he learns it. Not only that, but he even surpasses the second-generation Hokage master, and is better than the blue. Looking at the entire ninja world, who can be compared with Namikaze Minato? It was enough to shock her that there was a Li Yi. Now, there is one more person. Uzumaki Kushina was mired in deep self-doubt. Isn't my man the most special? Namikaze Minato smiled wryly. He knows Uzumaki Kushina's character very well, and of course he knows what Uzumaki Kushina is thinking now. But he didn't say much. Because Li Yi has opened a door on the surface of the void. Come in, I'll take you to space transfer. After speaking, Li Yi stepped into the oval door first. Violet is a close second. Let's go. Namikaze Minato held Uzumaki Kushina's little hand, and the two entered the door together. The oval-shaped door disappeared immediately, and the surface of the void returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. At the same time, 100 miles away, the surface of the void was suddenly opened, and a fist-sized hole appeared out of thin air. One Eye looked around along the hole, and after confirming that there was no one around, the hole gradually expanded and finally turned into an oval door. The four came out of the door. Namikaze Minato said with emotion, "This ability is really powerful. It can not only move in space, but also take the lead in detecting the enemy's situation. It is more practical than Hiraishin's technique. Don't underestimate yourself." Uzumaki Kushina gave Namikaze Minato a hard look. Namikaze Minato said helplessly, "I'm telling the truth." Li Yi then asked, "Minato, can you transfer to the land of water?" "Yes." Namikaze Minato nodded. "I set a mark on a hidden place in the land of water, which can be transferred there, but..." Suddenly the conversation changed. "I can't guarantee that there will be an enemy ambush there." Li Yi heard the words, thoughtfully, and said, "After we passed, we immediately entered my space to hide, so as not to be ambushed." "Good." Namikaze Minato nodded, then asked, "Master Tsunade has been transferred to the land of water?" Li Yi nodded. Namikaze Minato's brows furrowed slightly. "This is a bit difficult." Li Yi asked Namikaze Minato to go to the land of water first is because the distance between him and Tsunade is a little too far, and if he transfers directly, he will drain a lot of physical strength at one time. He wanted to make sure that when he got to Tsunade, he still had absolutely enough energy. Therefore, it is better to go directly to the land of water and wait for the rabbit. Hiraishin also has a distance limit, and even Namikaze Minato cannot directly transfer from here to the land of water at one time. Namikaze Minato first moved the three of them to an island, and then to another island. After 2 consecutive crossings, they finally came to the land of water. The moment the 4 of them landed, Li Yi immediately opened the door and the 4 rushed in. Shish! Almost at the same time, kunai, darts, and shuriken flew from the sky, but in the end, they all failed and shot on the ground. Chapter 318_embarrassment. It's dangerous, Uzumaki Kushina turned towards Li Yi's face, breathing out the aroma, with lingering fears on his face. Feeling that she was too close to Li Yi, she hurriedly took a half step back and looked at Li Yi with embarrassment and shame on her face. Namikaze Minato is by her side, but she is about to kiss Li Yi just now, can she not be embarrassed? Li Yi didn't think much about it. Uzumaki Kushina is beautiful, Lee has no idea about her. Therefore, not to mention that the distance is so close, even if the two sides are kissed together, he will not feel anything. Namikaze Minato didn't see Uzumaki Kushina's slightly hot cheeks because the space of the door was dark. Also, Namikaze Minato has been looking around and not paying attention to Uzumaki Kushina. Brother Lee, is this your space? It's strange. Namikaze Minato looked around and said. It's okay. Lee is very humble. How long can we stay here? Namikaze Minato asked. Lee replied, between 1 hour and 2 hours. Namikaze Minato was a little surprised. For so long, I've never heard of the bloodline boundary of the other space system, which can accommodate people for such a long time. Lee did not answer, but said, I sensed where Tsunade is. She is about 30,000 meters away from us now. When she is 10,000 meters away from us, we will go to her side. Good. Namikaze Minato nodded and then asked, Brother Lee, do you have any specific plans? Lee replied, the goal is very clear, that is to save Tsunade back to Konoha village without confronting the enemy. At that time, I will first cut a hole in Tsunade's body. A mark was left on her body and she was moved away. I have a question. Namikaze Minato said suddenly, you cut a hole in Tsunade-sama's body, won't she die? No. Lee shook his head and explained, my world is connected to the real world. I cut a hole in her, which is just equivalent to transferring her body into my space. On the surface, her body has been separated from her body, but in fact, the two are still closely connected. Quote. So it is. Namikaze Minato suddenly realized and nodded. Then follow this method, the other party will never think that there are two space ninjas in our Konoha village. Namikaze Minato said with a smile. Lee didn't speak, but closed his eyes with a serious expression on his face. Time flows by minute by minute. Before I knew it, 10 minutes passed. Suddenly, Lee suddenly opened his eyes and said, come on. Prepare for action. Finished speaking, Lee waved his right hand flat and drew it into a fan shape. In an instant, a hole the size of a baby's fist appeared in the air. Whoa! The sound of the waves came in through the hole. Lee first followed the hole, glanced towards the outside world, and then said, they were on the boat, there were more than 10 ninjas around, but they didn't find it. It's not a big problem, let's start action. Good. Namikaze Minato nodded. Lee thought about it, the hole slowly expanded, from the size of a baby's fist to the size of an adult's fist. Namikaze Minato followed the hole, carefully stretched out his right hand, and patted Tsunade lightly. Chapter 319 (middle count). On board. Tsunade suddenly felt a pat on the back. Huh. Tsunade turned his head, but saw no one behind him. She froze for a moment. Did you just have a hallucination? She didn't think much about it, thinking that she felt wrong. At this time, in the devil fruit space, Namikaze Minato withdrew his right hand and said, it's time to transfer. Transfer now. Lee said. Good. Namikaze Minato nodded, quickly hand seal with both hands, and finally clapped with both hands, move. With a swoosh sound, Namikaze Minato's body began to look illusory. But the next moment, Namikaze Minato suddenly trembled, and the illusory body instantly became solid. Huh! He groaned, as if he had been backlashed. A trace of blood spilled from the corner of his mouth, and then he fell to the ground with a plop, and the flow of chakra in the body also became disordered. Uzumaki Kushina hurriedly helped Namikaze Minato and asked, how are you? Are you okay? What happened? Namikaze Minato clutched his chest, as if he had been hammered hard, and he couldn't breathe. He said with difficulty, Master Tsunade has another space mark on his body. The two marks cancel each other out, and I can't move her away. Huh. Lee frowned slightly, and immediately narrowed his eyes to think about how to deal with it. What then? Uzumaki Kushina asked. Namikaze Minato did not speak, fell into silence, and started to think. Suddenly, Lee Yi said, "Go directly to Tsunade's side and throw him into my space." "It's too risky." Namikaze Minato analyzed. "Master Tsunade has many ninja guardians, including a space ninja. If you bring her here, that space ninja is likely to chase here, and a fierce battle is inevitable." Quote. "Are you afraid you won't be able to beat?" Lee Yi looked at Namikaze Minato. Namikaze Minato did not speak. What he is most proud of is the art of Hiraishin. In the past, he dared to wave everywhere because even if he couldn't beat him, he could easily escape. But this time, he was afraid. There is also a space ninja among the enemies. Also as a space ninja, Namikaze Minato knows how difficult this ninja is. Furthermore, Namikaze Minato does not know the true strength of his opponent. He dared not take the risk. When he does something, he can only do it when he has at least 8 points of certainty. If it is lower than 8 points, he generally does not do it. This is also the fundamental reason for his victories in every battle. Lee Yi said, "Although this is a risky approach, there is no other way. We must rescue Tsunade before she reaches the land of water. You should know better than me that saving people in other countries is what a hassle." Namikaze Minato did not answer, but fell into deep thought. Lee Yi didn't give Namikaze Minato time to think and shouted, "The two women are staying here, Minato, come with me." Lee Yi waved his hand, opened a big hole in Tsunade's back, and rushed out. Namikaze Minato has always been calm, but now he is in a hurry and he doesn't have time to think too much, so he has to jump out with Lee Yi. On board. Lee Yi and Namikaze Minato appear out of nowhere. However, as soon as they stood firm, an old laughter sounded from not far away. "Tisk tisk, the old man has been waiting for you for a long time, and you are here." A Yuhi-colored formation appeared out of nowhere, like an upside-down bowl, trapping Lee Yi, Minato, and Tsunade into it. Chapter 320-shock. Oops, we've been tricked. Namikaze Minato's face changed. Lee Yi did not speak, but looked at the source of the voice. There stood an old man with white hair and wrinkled face, leaning on a cane, looking very dignified. Although he was very old, his eyes were bright, and he kept staring at Namikaze Minato, and said, "Yellow hair, it seems that you are Namikaze Minato. Tisk tisk, I didn't expect this old man to get a lot of money today, and he could actually catch you." Namikaze Minato didn't speak, but his face was already ugly to see ultimate. The old man never looked at Lee Yi from the beginning to the end. He looked down on Lee Yi. Namikaze Minato hands seal with both hands and wants to use Hiraishin's technique to leave. However, as soon as his body was illusory, it suddenly solidified, he groaned, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, obviously being strongly backlashed. If it wasn't for Lee Yi to support him in time, he would be sitting on the ground now. The old man saw this scene, he laughed, proud and disdainful, "In my space, your Hiraishin technique cannot be used at all, give up resistance." "Lee Yi, why are you here? Who asked you to come?" Tsunade turned his head to look at Lee Yi with an incredulous expression. Lee Yi didn't answer, but walked up to the Yuhi-colored barrier and reached out and knocked. Dong dong dong. The sound of knocking metal. This old man's barrier is impervious to water and fire, as strong as Mount High, you can't break it. The old man said with a smile. He asked the ninja beside him, "How far is the country of water now?" "Answer people, less than 20 minutes of water." Several ninjas answered in unison. "It's very close. Since that's the case, then the old man won't take you to space transfer." However, before the old man finished speaking, his voice suddenly stopped. Because he saw, Lee Yi took out a golden needle. To his surprise, the needle was gradually getting longer. In the blink of an eye, the golden needle was on top of the Yuhi-colored pouring bowl barrier. "Oh, this thing is very similar to Sarutobi Hiruzen's King Kong Rui stick. It can be big or small, long or short, but even the King Kong Rui stick may not be able to hold this old man away. However, the old man hasn't finished speaking yet. Bang! A crisp sound. Yuhi color pouring bowl barrier immediately exploded. Turned into Yuhi colored shards scattered all over the sky and scattered with the wind. What? The old man's eyes almost popped out. His face was full of disbelief, staring at Li Yi and asking, "What kind of weapon is this? Who the hell are you?" Li Yi didn't ignore him at all. With a big wave of his hand, the void was directly opened, forming a huge oval door. At the same time, Namikaze Minato appeared beside Tsunade out of thin air, grabbed her tender body and threw it into the door. Li Yi took out a smoke talisman and slammed it to the ground. With a sudden bang, the thick fog spread out, blocking his sight. Li Yi jumped in the door with Namikaze Minato. This series of operations made everyone present stunned. However, the white-haired old man was someone who had seen the world after all, and he came back to his senses in the next moment. With a wave of his sleeves, a gust of wind whistled out, blowing all the smoke away. However, all three have disappeared without a trace. When the old man saw this, he frowned at first, but the next moment he sneered and said with disdain, "Hee hee, can you run away? That woman has my space imprint on her body. Appear by her side. Just do it." The old man made a space seal with one hand and went to chase Tsunade.